Now, the story for Darksiders 2 takes place somewhere in between Darksiders 1 and maybe even a little after. I'm not completely sure, seeing that I never finished the first one, so again, I'm not really sure. But in this game, you actually play as the second horseman of the apocalypse, Death, and Death is actually trying to clear the name of his brother War from the first game, where War, of course, screwed up. He went to Earth when he wasn't supposed to, and because he did that, humanity was wiped off the face of the Earth. But just like his brother War, his journey will not be that easy. He will have to fight many creatures, many big, powerful bosses. He will meet up with allies and enemies alike, and he will find himself in a lot of perilous situations. Now, while I thought the story was very compelling in the long run, I thought the beginning, maybe the first 3, 4, even 5 hours, were really slow, and it really dragged down the experience. I mean, I did like meeting Death. I thought he was a really cool character. He looks badass. He is badass. He's the Reaper. He's the Grim Reaper, so he has to be cool, and he definitely is in the game. And the thing I really liked about Death is that you actually get a little bit of his backstory in the game, which I thought was really interesting. And for the most part, I thought the writing was very well done in the game. I liked that it was a mixture of action movie one-liners, some drama, and a sprinkle of humor just to add some levity to the game. While I did think the story was very slow in the beginning, overall I think the story itself is very well done. Now we talk about the sound, and the first thing I always like to talk about is, of course, the voice acting. And let me just say, Michael Wynkote as Death is probably one of the best casting decisions of this year so far, because Michael Wynkote has always had one of those gravelly, badass sounding voices, and that voice for the Grim Reaper is just amazing, and here it is exactly that. It's so awesome just to hear him as Death. With his voice and the way Death looks, you don't want to screw with this character. You really don't. Just stay away from him. Yeah, he'll kill your ass. Now, the rest of the voice cast doesn't have any real big standouts, but for the most part, I thought they did a good job. The sound design is bone-crunchingly awesome, because every time you hit an enemy with a weapon, they just destroy and just get killed and hurt and mangled, and it sounds great when you do it. And the soundtrack, when it kicks in, adds a nice adventurous, epic feel to it, and yeah, that's what I like from my soundtracks. The sound, especially the voice acting, is fantastic. Now, graphically, Darksiders 2 goes for a much more cartoony, over-exaggerated look, just like its predecessor, Darksiders 1. Now, I do like when games go for a exaggerated look. I mean, it's not a cel-shaded game, but it is very cartoony in the way people are designed, and I do like that. And for the most part, the character designs in the game are great, especially with Death. Death is just a badass-looking dude. He has this, like, stretched-out type of body with, like, a bunch of scars on his, like, chest and stuff, and he looks pretty freaking awesome. You'll meet many different allies and fight many different creatures, and they all have their little distinct features. But my one main problem with the graphics is actually the environments. Not that they look bad, even though some of the texturing looks very blurry, but because it's very repetitive. You'll go through a dungeon so many times in this game, and it's black, it's dreary, and they all look exactly the same, even if they're not actually the same. But overall, the graphics, for the most part, are good in the game. Not fantastic, but good. But now, let's finish this up and talk about the gameplay. Darksiders 2 is a open-world RPG adventure dungeon crawler with, of course, all the typical RPG stuff. You have a level-up system, which when you level up, which will unlock a skill point, which you can go and take into the skill tree and unlock brand new skills or even upgrade old ones that you already had. Occasionally, when you kill enemies, you get loot drops like equipment items like helmets and body armor and gloves and stuff, and of course, new weapons like different scythes and new secondary weapons, which include axes, arm blades, hammers, glaives. And seeing that this is an RPG, some of these weapons might have different abilities. Like some of them might be able to do frost damage or electric damage or something, and that's always welcome, because I always like to switch up my weapons even if they look exactly the same. They just won't feel the same, which is good. And it wouldn't be a RPG without some quests, and you have primary quests and of course secondary quests, and you get a couple of little collectible quests where you have to go and find like 15 relics or 20 crystals or something, and everybody loves collecting stuff, don't they? But of course, what makes this game a very rich experience is not the RPG elements. I mean, those are cool, open world's fine, whatever. You can ride on your little horse too, I forgot to mention that, whatever, that's cool. But the main thing that makes this a badass RPG, and I love saying that word badass, but it really is a badass RPG, is the combat and the platforming. Now, the combat in the game is hack and slash. I mean, you hack, you slash, you kill a bunch of enemies. At times, you can kill up to 10 to 15 enemies at once. It's pretty chaotic, just like Dust and Elysian Tale was. It's pretty chaotic at times, and the combat is definitely no slouch in the gameplay department because it's just so frantic, so much fun. It has a lock-on targeting system where you can lock on to one enemy and take them out, or you could just go guns a-blazing and say screw that lock-on system and just hit everything. You have 2 weapons to work with in this game. You have a scythe, and you also have whatever secondary weapon you pick, and for the most part, the combos, switching it up here and there, you know, going from X and then a little Y and stuff, jumping in the air and doing a little bit of X and Y here and there. It's really fulfilling. It is, just to do some combos. It's just really enjoyable. And also the boss fights end in glorious, brutal ways, and it's so awesome to look at. It really is. The combat here is just so fluid, so responsive, so brutal. I love it, I really do. But besides the combat, you also have the platforming, which will become very useful while you're in dungeons and of course questing, doing the objectives. And there'll be times where you have to wall run and jump to a different wall, jump onto ledges and jump to next ones and stuff. And we played this type of platformer before. Think Prince of Persia with a little bit of Nathan Drake added in just for measure. And the mixture of combat and platforming is just really refreshing because whenever you're doing combat and you're getting a little bored of that, you'll have to do some platforming and vice versa. And while you're exploring some dungeons, you'll actually have to do some puzzles, and the puzzles here are good. They actually tease your brain a little bit. The thing is, I found them very glitchy and very long at times, and that's really my only main problem with the gameplay, is that sometimes it's a little glitchy. But besides that, the gameplay here is absolutely fantastic, and the game itself is just great. It really is. I love this game, and it actually makes me a little sad that I didn't really care for Darksiders 1. So overall, if you want to go quest out there and be a horseman of the apocalypse and whip some ass, then definitely play this game because it's worth your time. Thank you, and goodbye.